So we're going to go and checking this one out today. It's Polo Blue Parfum. This is going to be the newest from the brand and from the line, you know, the newest addition into the Polo Blue lineup, which has gotten pretty big now. I mean, there's a lot of flankers in this line, and I think that means I should go ahead and start gearing up for a buying guide. Now, there are still a few that I need to pick up in order to complete my collection of this line so I can do that video, but I think it'll make it a lot easier for you guys to make a decision when you're wanting to add some to your collection, because you've got a lot to choose from now. But today we're just going to be focusing on one in particular, and of course that's the new Parfum. This is an actual Parfum concentration, kind of following the trend here. This year we've had a lot of Parfums and a good amount of Eau de Parfums as well, across a whole bunch of different brands and lines, so it was only fitting. So this one has become available for a little bit of a discount. If you hit the link down below, you can get this one for a little bit below retail, I do believe, which is nice. Given that this is a Parfum, I believe it's retailing $116 for, I want to say, this bottle size, or somewhere around in there. So prices are going up on these newer releases because a lot of them are coming out in Parfum concentrations, which are always just going to be a little bit more expensive. But today we're going to talk all about this one. I'm going to tell you how it smells, how it performs when you can wear it, and if I think it's worth picking up. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to start off with the smell. Now, immediately, as soon as you first apply this one, you get that Polo Blue smell right off the bat. I mean, it's right there. And that's an issue with this one that I've talked about quite a bit in passing. I featured this one in a number of lists and stuff ever since doing my first impressions. And it's one of those situations where if you just go into a department store, spray it up in the air, spray it on paper, even just spray it on your skin, you take your first sniff and judge it right off the bat, most people are going to say, oh, it's just like Polo Blue, and they're going to pass on it. They're going to walk out without picking it up. And this is a situation where you really need to let it get into the mid and dry down, which we will talk about. So that opening, you do get that signature Polo Blue smell, kind of that fresh, clean, shower gel blue smell. But keep in mind, in this situation here, it's not blue in terms of like aquatic. But keep in mind, in this situation here, it's not blue in terms of like ambroxan fragrance smell. It's just fresh shower gel, kind of traditional blue body wash without all that ambroxan. You know, this is not to be confused with Polo Deep Blue Parfum, which does have a lot of ambroxan, completely different. Now, as you start to get into the mid, you start to get some heavier notes, mainly a vetiver starts to come through a little bit, kind of giving it a drier, woody smell, and also patchouli. And a good amount of patchouli comes through starting in the mid, and it'll follow that into the base as well, or into the dry down. Also, a lot of aromatics are in this one, especially as it starts to settle down a little bit, lavender, clary sage, that sort of thing. So we'll take a look at the full note breakdown. We've got orange, cardamom, pink pepper up top, vetiver, clary sage, lavender, and jasmine in the mid, patchouli, olibanum, and oak in the base. So, like I mentioned, aromatic mid, lavender, clary sage, and that kind of comes through right off the top as well. Just clean and masculine and a little bit traditional smelling. So, you know, while a lot of people will say that the opening is almost exactly like Polo Blue, and again, I'm talking the original here, after you've smelled this a few times, the opening that is, you could start to pick up on some different nuances right off the bat that will lend it to have a different smell than the original, but again, still, it is relatively close initially. Like I mentioned, the magic of this one really is in the dry down. That is where you get more of the vetiver, the patchouli, and the olibanum, which is kind of giving off this warm smokiness, and the oak. The oak is a very interesting note in here. I always love that note. It's not used all that much. In some ways, it can almost give off this kind of almost semi-boozy smell, depending on how it's used. I mean, you take a look at some popular boozy fragrances out there for men, it's kind of using a bourbon oak type of accord somewhere along those lines, and so it can kind of give you that impression, along with the olibanum that they're using here in the base of this one, kind of giving it a resinous, kind of woody spiciness, a little bit of a smokiness. It's a really, really nice combination. The patchouli kind of giving off this green, almost kind of sweet chocolatey smell ever so slightly. You get a lot of depth in the dry down here, and that's something where you don't get nearly as much of that in Polo Blue, the original. I think there's an EDT, EDP, and then just a lot of the other Polo Blue flankers. There's Polo Ultra Blue, and like I just mentioned, Deep Blue, which is mango and ambroxan, and their kind of take on the more modernized blue fragrance. This is kind of throwing it back to its roots, but going even more mature, a little bit more masculine even than the original, and just making it so much more interesting. Like this one really becomes an interesting fragrance in the dry down, and that's something that you probably wouldn't normally hear every day when you're talking about Polo Blue, especially from someone who's into fragrances. That's going to be kind of like the Dylan Blue Sauvage type of thing, right? Kind of portrays a similar image, but there's, you know, something that's actually kind of captivating about this one, believe it or not, in the dry down. So let's go and talk about performance on this one. On my skin, usually on average, I'm getting around 7 to 8 hours, sometimes a bit more, just depends on the situation in which you're wearing it, the temperature, the weather, that sort of thing, and all that stuff, right? And of course your skin chemistry, somewhere around in there. Keep in mind this is a true parfum, so it does perform more so as such. It's not the biggest projector, so this is kind of more of a scent trail lever. You know, if I spray it up in the air, or if I wear it on my skin and I walk through a room, it'll hang out for a good amount of time up in the air. You could smell it for a while, and it'll slowly dissipate after that, but it will not have a lot of distance to it in terms of its projection there. It does kind of make up for that in the longevity department somewhat, although for some people it will still leave a bit to be desired. And then also the scent itself, for me, really makes up for the performance here overall. Not that the performance is bad, but it's one of those deals where I like how it smells so much on its own that when it comes to performance and other stuff like that, I'm not as critical on it. Because performance is kind of one of those things that can be a tipping point. If you take a fragrance that maybe doesn't necessarily smell bad, but maybe it's super, super, super generic. Like I'm talking like run-of-the-mill cookie cutter Invictus level of generic. Nothing wrong with Invictus, but I mean, of course, that one's been cloned and copied and produced many times as well. And this is just one example of one. But then you take that fragrance, you make it, you know, much cheaper, but then you give it a whole bunch of performance. Now all of a sudden people are going to be gravitating towards that fragrance because it's you know, cheap, and maybe it's you know, super overdone and synthetic. But if it lasts for 12 hours and projects like crazy, now all of a sudden people want everything to do with it. So it's kind of one of those weird situations. Not the case here with this one though. The scent is what's doing the heavy lifting for me, and that's what I like. And I also just like how parfums wear. I like the you know, less loud projection in favor of the scent trail, and just how a parfum behaves on my skin. It's kind of my favorite concentration. Of course, you don't always get to pick and choose, right? Not every fragrance has a parfum, but they always tend to work well for me. That's just my skin. Maybe your skin, you know, tends to react better with eau de parfums or even eau de toilettes or whatever. Just depends. This is going to be a big people pleaser as well, as you would imagine. Again, we're still talking Polo Blue DNA, just a bit more richness in the base, but not too far to where it gets weird or anything like that. Like it doesn't get super challenging to where people just out in the real world would smell this and think it smells bad or something, right? It's not like they're throwing in a bunch of oud or anything. Still going to be a big people pleaser here, which is nice. That's what you come to expect from Polo Blue in general, and also just from Ralph Lauren fragrances. You know, a lot of these are going to be still very designer level, and I mean that in a good way. Even take a look at something like Polo Supreme Leather, where they could have gone down the path of giving it a stronger leather, maybe more animalic, or just make it, you know, a bit more challenging. They still took the direction of being super mass pleasing and designer level, and that's what this one's going to be. At the end of the day, you can almost be confident that if you're buying a Ralph Lauren fragrance and on top of that a Polo Blue, you're going to be set up for compliments. That's just how it is. Quality is really nice as well. Super smooth stuff from opening to dry down, top to bottom. Nothing about it sticks out like a sore thumb or is sharp. And to that note, I actually think that this one comes across of higher quality than the original, because, you know, the original has that super like shower body wash freshness right off the bat, whereas this one, it still does, but immediately it's smoother to me. I don't know, this one just comes across more refined and a little bit more rich even initially, and I just find the quality of this one to come across a little bit more luxurious in a way. And as you could probably see from that spray, possibly, kind of not really pressurized atomizers, but really nice atomizers nonetheless. Yeah, I mean, when I just sprayed it up in the air and I smelled it, and now I go back to my hand, the difference is massive. I mean, you really do get that oliban and patchouli mixture here and that oak in the dry down on your skin. Rich, inviting, mysterious, but still masculine and familiar. Really nice combo. Alrighty guys, that's gonna do it for me. Polo Blue Parfum. I think it's worth the pickup. I really, really do. While it may seem redundant and boring to some, and it might be to some, for me, if I'm gonna choose a Polo Blue to have, this is gonna be it. Out of everything that I've smelled and that I have in my collection that I've tried, this is my favorite. And even out of some other more versatile fragrances that I own, I would choose this over those. I really like how this one is. I will drop a link down below. That's gonna do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you tomorrow with another one. Take care.